3 минутки, я думаю, и будем начинать.
Just 3 more minutes and we will start. So we will start right at noon.
В полдень тени соответствует действительности. Ни выше и ни ниже, поэтому. Этот звук, кстати, меня ассоциируется почему-то с вокзалом ИКТЖ. Вот это как будто поезд сейчас вот. Ну что, давайте начинать, дорогие друзья.
Okay, dear guests, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Evgeny Pitorin. So we're going to start our panel session on the 11th Congress of Financiers. Hello, dear guests. Thank you for gathering here at our panel session. On behalf of the organizers, I would like to congratulate you on the 30th anniversary of our national currency Tenge. I wish you a very productive and constructive discussion today on today's session. So before we start, let's clap, let's support this session and to appreciate that we're all here. So let me introduce all our participants from left to the right. Alexeya Vasilyevna Mышляева, Deputy of the Parliament of the Republic of Kazakhstan. Yerzhan Murzalin, Director of the Security Department, National Bank of Kazakhstan. Roman Perminov, Director, Department of Informational and Cybersecurity, Agency for Regulation and Development of the Financial Market. Ruslan Abdikalikov, Chairman for Information Security Committee, Ministry of Digital Development, Innovation and Aerospace Industry of Kazakhstan, and Janar Mugalova, Senior Representative of the Center for Combating Cybercrime, Ministry of Internal Affairs of Kazakhstan. So that's our panelists, all the legislative branch, those who trying to catch the cyber criminals, and distinguished people who are trying to put this into the legal framework. We have lots of interesting topics. We have 4 blocks, and colleagues, I will be very strict with the timing because we have very little time, and so maybe let's start with a general topic. It's no secret that geopolitics really affects financial sector, and the same goes for cybersecurity. So Kira Vasilina, let's start with you. Cybersecurity situation is not very simple. Financial sector is reacting to this, but what's happening with the cybersecurity? What are the most critical legislative measures that are being discussed, that are being introduced to make sure that Kazakhstan is more cyber sustainable to the attacks? So you have 5 minutes in the first part of our block. Dear colleagues, I'd like to welcome everybody to our today's discussion. So, Evgeny, you started from a very far point and then you landed on our topic. Let me just say a few words. Yes, in reality, in the era of digitalization, in the era of digital development, we aim at fast result that we see. It's the introduction of services, its proactivity, the maximal comfort when receiving services, but of course we have to remember that any digitalization, any remote cooperation, any data gathering has to do with cyber security risks of these systems. So in this regard, we're working, it's a separate field of legislation, so that we align our legislation with the world standards of security, of informational security, from the attack against cyber crimes. We're working with our bodies to do that. So what we did in the recent past, it's several packages to change the management of personal data. So there are cyber crimes related directly to hacking systems. There are cyber crimes related to different new technologies like phishing. There are cyber crimes related to excessive trust of people. So it's a whole spectrum of crimes, violations that need to be considered. So in terms of personal data, there are several amendments were made in terms of requirements to the operators of personal data. They were divided into private and state. The second direction that we look at in the Senate right now, for the first time in our legislation, we gave the legal status to the platforms of white hackers, bug bounty. So what is used in private companies, in big private companies that can do that, our legislative framework will allow you to use this instrument to provide the security of state informational systems, and I think that financial informational systems, they will not be an exception. So right now we are considering the set of amendments related to anti-fraud center creation in cooperation with the National Bank, and they will comment on that, which has to do with the fight against the crimes. It's a separate subject. It will work related to suspicious operations, transactions. So in terms of requirements to informational systems, we are enhancing them in terms of legislative framework. As for the plans, as for what we're doing right now, maybe you've heard that recently we adopted a set of amendments. When is it my five minutes are up? No? So when we reconsider biometric data and the systems that we're launching right now, because first it has to do with the financial sector, and as part of the law of the national data and national statistics, and we will reconsider our approach to that, because I think we were too focused on using biometric data on all corners. We have identifications, and biometrics data need to be they cannot be changed. It's a one under the direction, not only biometrics, but we will review the legal framework in terms of data, in terms of their impersonality, in terms of requirements to informational system, working with big sets of data. Then we have the bill on cloud technologies, on the center of processing of data in terms of requirements. So that's another direction that we're working on. And we just started discussing with the colleagues at the coffee break, the Ministry of Internal Affairs. Now it's the time when we have to introduce and we have to reform the criminal and administrative code. Because as of today, the digital reality that we're living in, it suggests the presence of different forms of crimes and different forms of proving, of justifying. We started making amendments to the criminal code and administrative code in cybersecurity area, and we will plan to enhance that. I tried to do it very fast. Of course, there are many other issues related to it, but that's all I have time for. Yes, we have a very good reaction from the audience, because our colleagues, their work in practical field, there are no theorists. So in terms of executive body, what challenges have you faced? What requests are you receiving? What feedbacks are you receiving? The real one, not fictional one. What challenges you as a body are you facing right now? Hello, dear colleagues. Happy holiday, of course. Thank you for the question, Evgeny. Based on your main question, I would like to say that geopolitical situation does not affect the cybersecurity, which is surprising. But for us, for specialists in the IT security, it's a permanent process. Annually, this amount is growing geometrically. So, and it's not news for us. But I would like to emphasize the fact that thanks to the work that is being done by our ministry, more attention of the public goes to the protection of their personal data, which is good, because last year we received 200 complaints about the violation of personal data. This year, every month, we get 100 complaints, and 4 people who work in the Department for the Protection of Personal Data, it's really difficult for them. So, like, they get a lot during the day, yes. Also, we want to continue this work, this enlightenment work, and we want to encourage our people to turn to us in case of any violations. Because in our ministries, we have many fields of regulation. I think it's correct that the protection of personal data goes hand in hand with cybersecurity. I think the weak spots of cybersecurity, they overlap with the protection of personal data. And in the nearest future, we plan to put forward the roadmap for the next 2 years in the Committee of national security, where we'll look at theoretical approaches, practical approaches, and the policy making related to strengthening of cyber security and the protection of personal data. I think that's in a nutshell. Thank you. I really liked your point of view that geopolitics is not influencing cybersecurity, but on the other hand, according to yours, the complaints to leakage or disclosure of personal data. Let's ask our colleagues from Ministry of Internal Affairs. Without or with geopolitics, has there been an increase in cyber crimes in Kazakhstan? Hello, dear colleagues. First of all, allow me to congratulate everybody on this holiday and welcome everybody. And I'd like to thank the National Bank for organizing this event, because for us it's an opportunity to discuss all the issues that we have and to meet the people here. Today we met, for example, Ekaterina Vasilyevna. We discussed some issues that I hope that we can solve in the future. As for the geopolitical situation and the increase of cyber crimes, of course, the digital technologies, they give great opportunity for the state, but at the same time they arm the criminals with new techniques, new methods. I'd like to say that the financial crimes, they are spreading all over the world, and it's the problems and challenges for the whole world, including Central Asia, Kazakhstan, and the European countries. As for Kazakhstan, for the past 5 years, unfortunately there has been a rapid growth of internet crimes. To compare, last year we had 4,000. As a result of 2022, actually we had more than 20,000 compared to the previous years, so 5 times growth. Speaking of losses, in 2018 the losses were worth 600 million. According to 22, the damage, it's the approximate number, it's the 16 billion. This year, as a result of the last period, we will take the last months, we registered 17,000 internet crimes. So I would like to say that the main volume actually originates from abroad, and the internet criminals that are abroad, they're not in Kazakhstan. They represent the main volume of economic threat to Kazakhstan. From our end, we do on a permanent basis the analysis. We're trying to identify the main sources of spreading of crimes and methods of crimes. Right now, the ministry breaks down 4 categories. First, it's in internet trading. It's the sales using social media. Then it's when the criminals call and they pretend to be the representatives of banks, of representatives of law enforcement bodies. They convince the people and they pull some money from them. Then the next method is the offer to invest well. And the 4th way, as Ekaterina Vasilyevna said, it's the phishing websites. So it's the websites that created to pull the personal data from our people. Thank you very much. You know, the word that really scared me, but it didn't make me happy, the amount of loss, this number is really astonishing. If we extrapolate this on the official complaints, I think it could be up to several million per person, and these are catastrophic numbers. And of course, just the day before yesterday, I heard about a case when, as a result of cyber crime, the person lost about like 9 million Tenge, I think. So catastrophic numbers. So going from the guests to the hosts. So based on what we heard right now, Roman Viktorovich, let's start with you. Based on what we heard, you as a professional, as a practitioner inside the regulating body, how do you evaluate the cyber sustainability level of our sector? Are we ready for that? Thank you, Evgeny, for your question. I'd like to congratulate everybody to everybody's feeling it and everybody understands the scale. Looking at the scale, 30th anniversary of Tenge, I think it's a big step. I think we have a long way to go still, but we've, according to your question, based on your question, Evgeny, first, I'd like to, we really went from cyber sustainability to cybersecurity, but cyber crimes and fraud, these are two different directions. Of course, it's clear for a regular person, but for us as regulators, we are focused more on informational security of financial organization, and financial market has always been at the forefront of this defense. And the first aim of all cyber criminals, it's the getting rich. Of course, they look to the money where the money is, and it's the financial markets. And financial market is the first one that was introducing new technologies, and all digital technologies, they are related to the necessity to provide informational security, because prioritization of several points is about the providing security. So if we look at cybersecurity of the market, how do we evaluate it as a regulator? Our market is very diverse. It's represented in different organizations in different directions. And speaking about the banks, we can differentiate between the size of the capital, level of security, let alone the other types of organizations. Of course, as a regulator, we're trying to build our organization based on the condition of this or that management of this or that organization, and we cannot say that there is some average indicator for, because it depends on each company's security, each company's level of security, depending on the diversity of the service that is being provided. So we build our regulation in a way that we can estimate the opportunities of a financial organization, and we need to build our regulation based on that. Of course, as a regulator, we want the regulation to be close to global standards, so that we take into account everything and we consider everything, we consider all the participants, and we interact with the cybersecurity office so that we comply with the international standards. So that's what we're trying to achieve. And we can say that regulation is regulation, but the criminals, they are not they're still developing. They will always be ahead, one step, two steps ahead, maybe. That's the situation. A regulator is always behind, is always catching up, no matter how hard it's trying, because it's a big state agency. It has to build its policy based on the reality that it exists in. Of course, we're trying to be ahead, and our main role as a regulator is that we need to create conditions into which organizations become cyber sustainable, and so that they can react actively and make necessary measures. And our role as a regulator is to help the market to make sure that they are cyber sustainable and they provide the services, cyber services, that allow the whole market to develop. We've been doing that for a long time, and the banks, I think they will tell us that their results are evident.
Thanks. Okay, but let me catch up on a few things. Let me add. Obviously, you are absolutely right when you say that the medium average in the hospital is available and accessible. Although, to mention for the people who are watching us online, they would be happy to hear that there's like an average indicator. But let me talk about something else. That the banks are quite developed organizations, obviously, and of course, maybe they are the best to count the money. And when there's someone who comes to a business person, so someone who deals with the risks and says, "Hey, listen, we need this much money for this and that," and then they hear that, like, is it for real? Do you really need the money? And then the money is not there. And obviously, there's not many banks that are, maybe obviously there's now more of them, but generally there's not many banks who go up into the practical protection until something happens for sure. So this is like an old saying. Do hope for the bodies to protect you, but don't be fooled yourself. So obviously, they should be relying on themselves. So obviously, we should be doing the good on purpose. What are the preventive measures that the regulator is taking so that the cyber resilience sector is provided with security, not without waiting for them to be invested in? Good afternoon, dear colleagues. Thank you for the organizers for the speech, for the floor. Let me first congratulate everyone on the 30th anniversary of our national currency and wish everyone a financial stability and so that we all flourish and move forward. Replying to your question, as it was earlier said by my colleagues, including encountering the growth of cyber attacks, there is a necessity for continuous growth in cyber resilience, especially in terms of implementing some certain measures in financial sector. Within these goals, the National Bank, what does is they are constantly developing and implementing some preventive actions, which are aimed at providing national objects and informational systems. And in the middle of last year, 2022, by the task of our president, what was done by the National Bank was implemented as a platform which reacts to financial attacks in the financial sector. So the main goal of this platform is to collect and monitoring and reacting to cyber incidents by the members of the platform. The platform members are payment companies, our branches in the regions, and the remaining organizations, they include on voluntarily. So what we've done is it has more than 160 organizations. It's important to note that in July of this year, the National Bank has approved a system of development which includes best world practices, international modern standards into providing informational security and cyber resilience in all. So the main principle of the concept is improving the existing architectures and platforms and enlisting conceptual changes. Well, that's in short. Okay, thanks a lot, dear colleagues. Let's say we've discussed it with geopolitics. We now have a better understanding. Let's now move on to go into depth into the practical area of this. And obviously, without some legislatory acts, we won't be able to do anything without some concrete hard copy documents and stuff. So I'd like to include this block where we have about 5 minutes for each speaker. With Ruslan Kenjibekers, we do have this law of informatization. We do have common requirements for all. So what do you think in terms of current requirements? Is it enough for us to discuss them? Are they enough? Or do we kind of still need to look into the area of independently developed platforms like NIS, STOBR, and so on and so forth? Do we need to create something ground up, implement and develop, or do we just follow the path that has already been engraved for us? Yevgeny, thanks a lot for your interesting question. Look, it's important that, in fact, encountering all of the experience that Kazakhstan now has with digitalization, we think we are not there yet to be developing our own certain standards. And not just developing them, but first they need to be implemented in the country, and second, which is the most important, and then make other members of international markets accept these standards. We are very well aware of that. So how does this legal work is being done. So we research all of the foreign experience, and we also research the renewals and the standards, and then the key areas are already there. 27 and 00 and so on and so forth. We do have the standards for informal security information. We do try to implement our standardized unified system, and also there's a lot of work being done in the legal area by our ministry. We're trying to code all the questions and issues related to digitalization and protection of the data, including the personal data. So you might have heard that the ministry is now being developing a digital codex, digital law, which will let us implement all of put it all together. It's a law about information. It's a law about personal data and their protection. It's a law on electronic documents. It's a law on law and legal services. So it's an act. So we try to do all of that. We hope that the main focus in that will be the act on protection of personal data. What our minister is now trying to put forward is called a security by design, not trying to protect that has already been done not correctly initially and then try to cover that up, but trying to create new systems which are aimed at security at the very beginning. So that's how we spend less resources onto keeping up with the system in their creation. So we've researched the world, experienced the world practices, and what we've seen was that the key companies, key countries that are leaders in cyber resilience, cyber security, there's about 10 to 15% from the IT budget is being spent to informational security. What we've looked at in our country is only 3 to 5%. So to kind of fix the situation, what we're preparing a legal act in changes which says that no less than 10 or 15% of each of IT budget is going to be allocated to an informational security, because as you are aware, all of the informational security problems are being financed at the very last. First of all, the president says, let's create a system. It's been quickly implemented and it's really cool. But then when there's like a lot of people trying to use the system goes down. So that's when there's a leakage. So we do have some sort of cybersecurity, cyber fraud accidents. So why do they happen? They happen is because so the idea was just, let's just create it and then make it comfortable. But no one actually took a second to think, is it going to be safe? Is it going to be long-term? So for us to try and overcome this, we try and use it through economic areas in the legal act, trying to implement these approaches. Thank you. So as you say, obviously it does match the problem, the issue, and the market. I face this problem very often in business areas when the marketing is pushing the market very hard, and then we should have issued it earlier, but obviously no one does think about it being safe and stuff. They are mostly concerned about the pace and it being fast. So continuing with the topic of normative legislative acts, I've heard earlier that your opinion that a couple of times that it's obviously not very full. So what happens? Let's say we have this digital code. We will finish it. What is the documents that we think is going to be like critical? Is there anything like this? Evgeny, I would put the digital code as at the very end. Obviously, we now are in discussion of that, but it's now being started. We would like this document to be heard by the expertise society, by people for us to code the digital act. It needs to be related to the legislative areas. When we do conflict with existing civilian administrative areas of law, so that's when this conflict needs to be overcome correctly, so that there is no disbalance caused in the system with this later. So this is the main area of this digital code. Step by step, it's important that we do come to that, but it's going to require a certain amount of time. In between those moments, I would like to make some comments that obviously, in general, we could be now, in digital era, we could be implementing very harsh norms. But because of poor administration, these norms will then turn into something very not bad, something not good, into evil. Obviously, we do have good requirements, administrative areas for these requirements for us to monitor them. The administration needs to be enriched and strengthened. This is number one. Number two is we are now very rich and very well resourced on informatization, and but it's not followed by the strengthening of the laws. It's a huge disadvantage because no one actually wants to follow the rules, which don't have any it doesn't have any punishment. Obviously, financial organizations, they do have something that needs to be changed. Their risk. If a banking system will be broken tomorrow, obviously that will lead to losses and damages. Obviously, there's a problem like this, but it includes the strengthening of administrative responsibility, especially criminal part. As you've correctly mentioned, that marketing is now very high on point, and they are now pushing it all towards the profit and money. But at the same time, we do have to overcome. Okay, we've previously said, let's say, the act that we are now discussing on implementing legislative law that will make a compulsory amount of budget that needs to be spent on financial security. All of this, it's not correct. It's not right. It actually should be natural it should be organic for a company to allocate money for financial security rather than using this money to pay a fine. So all of the money, the resources are not matching each other, the ones we use to pay the debts, the fine. And the third point is that as of today, we are falling behind on technology, and not implementing them is not an option for us without looking at the marketing tendencies. It's related to the development of technology, of registries, and what we've seen is the implementation of digital Tenge. Wishing good luck on that. It's going to be a good alternative for a crypto industry. It won't be an alternative, but still, it's something else. But it still would be considered a tool that would let to use the resources, blockchain technology. It's not about that. It's about us falling behind on technology. Technology are now working already, as it was the case with cryptocurrency. Whereas us, we're either like forbidding that or not regulating that. So it's a tendency of, which is not good tendency, that this kind of technology, artificial intelligence, we do have a lot of them, but still technological approaches, we do have technologically neutral and technologically relevant approach. So in the legislative area. If we haven't dealt with the technology correctly, we shouldn't be going to. But today we should be doing that. In the recent times, what you need to do is to relook and reconsider the philosophy of the legal regulatory of the digitalization. Legal regulation. If we do have some classic legal regulation experts in the room, you might not agree with me, and then we will, sooner or later, it will be signified as a separate industry. And this approach to pilot and experimental regimes to this digital law will be completely different from our classic system.
Yeah, I saw how Ruslan Kinjabekic looking at you when you were talking about this. So I think we lack like a baseball bat. Maybe we need some needles or some leeches. Yeah, it's at the very basic level. I would just thought of the initiative. So you need to go back to the sources, to the origins, to the basics. So we have all the range of the we have all the linguistic methods. I know all the people that can head this and chair this. We have another very important document. It's the relatively recently adopted Convention of Financial Sector, our vision for 2030, not Saudi Arabian, but ours. So, Roman Viktorovich, could you comment on maybe the interesting things planned?
Не дают мне сказать всех секретов концепции, но можно
We can say in the beginning that the conception in terms of information security, they have been relevant, they will be relevant in the next few years. Cyber risks, they always exist, especially in the financial market. Our task as part of this concept as regulators to build hierarchy but very flexible system, because the landscape of cyber crimes changes very rapidly, and regulation, it has to adjust to these changes of the landscape. As we know, the main regulator in information security in the government, it's the Ministry of Digital Development and their Committee on Information Security. And to somehow help the main regulator and to attract the other players in this direction and to provide the proper work, we suggested the directional work and on informational security sectional work. It's registered in our legal code right now on information security, and it allows us to react rapidly to the threats in the cyber security as a regulator at our own level and the sectional agency at their levels. And I hope in other section of economies they will have their own regulators. So we have the agency that at the legislative level, it's the sectional center for sectoral security. Based on that, we developed pool of normative acts that allow to implement all the tasks that are put on us. And if we look at the concept, based on the tasks that are written there, we built a necessary hierarchy for realizing not secondary, but all other accompanying tasks. And the next task, as far as I'm concerned, is the providing automated approach to certain sectoral employees and us as an agency, because manually it's hard to regulate. So for that, we developed informational system called KNR, and this system showed its efficiency from 2021. I think banks will confirm that because it's really showing good results. I think it's the right approach, and other state bodies that worked as a sectoral center, they will also feel this. We are ready to share our experience with them. Right now, we have a very interesting field that we're developing right now. It's the analysis of the events that go to VCM banks. So for that, we are experimenting with neural networks to analyze this data. I think it will help us. It will simplify everything, because we get big volumes of information and we need to analyze it and then take preventive measures. It's another objective of the concept is to automate the business processes. And another direction, it's the checks, inspection. As a regulator, we have to inspect the compliance of our requirements. It's another side of the concept. In this regard, we also have some results. So inspections that suggest some creation of competent personnel that has to be not lower than the qualification of those who are being inspected. And we are forming them right now. Our personnel has increased, and I think we're going to move in this direction. As in, inspection are aimed not at punishing but at helping the organization and creating more cyber resilience. So that's the general picture of the concept. It's a big document, but that's the main things in terms of information security. Thank you. I think here, with that difficult approach, it's also very important not to plan, not to budget and realize, but and to put across and to sell to those who are lower, to all the financial sector. Evgeny Bekirich, what do you think? Do you think this communication part, how well worked through is it? How well are they at putting this across, at communicating this? Do you have any success here? Do we need the support of the media and of the people, or everything is going as planned? What do you think? Thank you, Evgeny. Thank you for the question. It's very topical, very important. As of now, with the rapid growth of cyber crime, cyber fraud, a lot has to do with digital technologies. So the cyber awareness is very important among the people. So we need the engagement of all the stakeholders, the government bodies, the financial sector, in implementing the activities related to enhancing of awareness. Of course, the work of digital awareness is very important. To realize these objectives, the regulators and financial institutions are working on a set of informational educational measures focused on preventing cyber fraud. Modern technological decisions adapted to them, to the online frauds. And with that, the banks systematically in the media, in the social media, on official in online sources published messages on alertness of the cyber crimes. Also, the banks, they provide digest to increase the awareness on cyber hygiene, which increases and boosts the whole culture when we work with the people. Also, I would like to say additionally that we need the active response of cinema industries, the fraudsters, this TV series that came out. It shows the details of criminal groups in organizing cyber crime, cyber fraud, which helps the people to raise the awareness in cyber area, and the population, they understand how to react in that situation. Thank you. So speaking of the fraud, of course, it's not one of my favorite topics. It will sound strange, but it's very multifaceted because there are different aspects to it. There is aspects to it, whether to publish it or not publish it. For example, personal data, should we publish it? There's a whole chain of things, and I should ask Janar Saigirevna, what else at the state level, at the ministries level, and down to the regular citizens, what needs to be done to increase the fight against this fraud? As a matter of fact, I don't know whether it's favorite for you, but it's very topical, not only for Kazakhstan, but only for all other countries. Well, first, We need the tight cooperation with all the key stakeholders in the government, and the head of state also mentioned that recently, and he instructed to the state bodies to make necessary measures to protect the people from telephone scamming, from online scamming. And now the list of competent bodies include not only Ministry of Internal Affairs, but also other state bodies. Let me just give you an example. Last year, there was an increase of such crimes when somebody called from other numbers. They would introduce themselves as the bank representatives of representatives of ministries of internal affairs and try to pull money from people. As ministry, we saw this from the inside. We put this forward to the discussion. On a frequent basis, we have intersectoral working group meetings. We put this forward to the discussion. We've been discussing for a very long time with the ministries of digital development, and we engaged the operators of cell phone providers, and we adopted certain measures. We launched mechanisms to block these numbers, and as a result, we see the decrease of such crimes using other numbers. We decreased it by 20-30%. It just as an example, and it goes to the point that we have close interaction with the state bodies. Then it's the intergovernmental cooperation, because alone one country cannot fight the crimes that have such a massive coverage, transborder coverage. It's hard, and right now we're trying to get information from abroad, from the providers of cell phone companies, cell phone operators, from the financial organization, from the organizations which are not in the Kazakh jurisdiction. So we need the tight cooperation with other countries, and on all platforms we said that currently we got the invitation to join the convention on the Council of Europe on cyber security. This is the only convention, it's the only national act that regulates the issues of international cooperation. By joining this convention, we'll be able to cooperate with 68 countries plus in the future 23 more countries which are the observers. In the future they can join it as well. As part of the convention, we have the special contact center 24/7. What does it give us? We will be able to pull the information 24/7, means all around the clock. We can cooperate with other similar bodies in other countries. And analogous convention is being developed at the United Nations level. If this convention will be implemented, if there will be a consensus and all countries will approve it, then the spectrum of international cooperation will be wider, because we understand if the Council of Europe is 68 countries, it's then in the United Nations it's 193 countries. So we need to cooperate of relevant bodies, and we need the intergovernmental cooperation. And for the second point, not 68 countries, but 192 or 191. This difference, we need to look at the list where we have the cyber groups. Then we'll have less people to work with. Guys, we run through a very big amount of information, and with great pleasure, let's go to the third block. I think it's even more practical one. It's related to operational responding to cyber attacks in digital transformation, which includes the financial sector of the banks, and starting from the top, Yerzhan Zalmatyrovich in National Bank. From that perspective, I hope our cyber criminals are not watching us or they're at lunch right now. What are the mechanisms of operational response and do we have right now, just in general? without, of course, violating your personal code. Just say that everything's good. We'll be happy to hear it. Thank you very much for your question. The operational responsiveness to prevent the cyber crimes at the National Bank. We have a center for cyber attacks. We have 3 lines of defense. And we have one technological platform which provides the whole cycle on how to respond of cyber crimes at the National Bank and in its subsidiaries. And for each line of defense, we have our own functions. The first line gets the first one to respond to the second line, and analyzes it and processes it and studies it. And the third line, it's the experts that provides the full analysis in the action plan. Also, the Center for Cyber Security and the Cyber Polygon. As part of this Cyber Polygon, we have a training center where we do activities on testing, on hacking. We learn how hacking works and how the criminals work. We develop some scenarios, and then we put them into life, and then we bring them to our real system. So it's like a lab, research lab. Well, not to the scale that we want it to be. It's more like a field-oriented. But it allows us to build and do analysis of certain incidents that could really occur. It's taking into account all the incidents that we collect from our bases, from our CM systems, and we share it with Kynar systems. We collect all the data, we create a risks map, and based on which we figure out the possible incidents, possible scenarios. It's a very interesting thing. I know a lot of scientists that would be happy to be in that. Arman Alexandrovich, you looked at me in an interesting way when I asked this question, but I still need to ask this question. Maybe could you share your personal experience of operational responsiveness to cyber threats? Or practical experience? Okay, let's start with this. We all understand, I will be talking about the financial sector. We understand that all cyber threats that we've been talking about, they're related to the development of digitalization of bank and development of ecosystems developed around banks. Of course, it's convenient when you can buy and sell everything in one place, and you can integrate all the shops with the banks, but that's the main threat is there. Because we are, as a regulator, we provided the necessary level of security for our regulating subjects of financial market. But there are some subjects that also interact with banking sector, with financial markets, suppliers of other services, and they're integrated. And we can see that sometimes there's a protected bank sector, and there is other services which do not comply with the minimal requirements of information securities. It relates to the developers of mobile applications and web servers which are not fully compliant to the requirements and the rules of the game. As Ruslan Kichebekovich mentioned, that everybody wants to do it faster. We want to protect the bank sector. We're trying to enforce our measures, but sometimes the banks, they do not follow. That's where the main threats come from. It's the threat of attacks on the supply chains. In our understanding, that's the main risks that exist there. Of course, still there are some classical threats like phishing, social engineering, and attacks on uncoded assets. And there's some risks related to digital currencies, the blockchain systems. We need to take that into account as well. And as for practical part, I already talked about our informational system. that allows to quickly exchange information, allows to all our participants to give information on all the gaps that we need to fill. For example, just this year we had a case. According to the information of one of the participants, we shared this information with all our circle, and yes, they saw that gap, and in a very rapid way, they were able to close that gap. I will not talk about the specific case because some hackers can be listening to us, some other interested parties. So all the risks that we're seeing right now, it's the risks related to the development of ecosystems of banking sectors. That's where the main threat comes from. Thank you very much. And so the bigger these systems grow, the more risks grow. And so to summarize this block, I'd like to go back to those international cooperation. And I talked to about this with Janar Samegavevna. And so, could you please tell us how you're interacting with the international alliances, and are they helping us? And maybe we help them when we develop some cases in terms of cybersecurity.
Thanks a lot for your question. In fact, I would actually like to talk about that ecosystem that has now been created in our country in areas of cybersecurity, so that you have a better understanding, my colleagues. So the top level is the National Coordinating Information Center for Informational Security, which is in a technical body of the government. Then what we have next is the first financial areas, which covers the whole segment in the economy. Next, what we have is about 28 private operational informational reacting systems, which are called security operational systems, SOC. And then in the country, we also have 3 main reacting computing incidents. And then in those, we have one of them is a national, which is in the government technical body. And the main role of their interaction with the international security activity is related to CERT, which is a member of the main international platforms, as in FIRST in the whole region throughout the world, which is the Arab countries as well. They all of them interact with each other through our national CERT. What I'd like to note is that, as our colleagues from Internal Affairs Ministry have convinced us, they do usually have some sort of stays with phishing or DOS attacks. They don't work in terms of criminal responsibilities. That's why it's necessary for our country to quickly implement all of the European Union's requirements and join the Budapest Convention. Why is that? It's because this system will quickly let us react to criminal acts and investigating all of that. And this international partnership cooperation is already there, it's already in place. Whenever we have some large DOS attacks, we always do ask for help from other centers. Obviously, they try to use their abilities to help us neutralize these attacks. All of this has now been, it's a large-scale work for us to develop this ecosystem. As Ekaterina Vasilyevna has said, what we are doing on a regulatory area, this year, hopefully, we will implement these amendments to these acts. We will develop these platforms to identifying the vulnerability through using a legal path, using so-called white hackers. So it's not, we've come to this by researching the experience of others. We've done a pilot study. It's now being ongoing still. We've implemented the bar bounty, which includes separate electronic securities and banking areas and other private systems. It does show its effectiveness by us saying that so that we can effectively and quickly identify vulnerability of levels of 0D, which cannot be identified by any kind of sort of antivirus or any other system. As systems of the system. So a large hacking community is now trying to work within this platform. So it has about 1,200 members from all over the world. And during these 2 years, what we've identified are these kind of vulnerabilities that we have identified and closed them, but we can now voice them out. So we had the vulnerability of all the domains in the Kaznet, 170,000. We've identified vulnerabilities of the systems of life forces of Astana city and a number of vulnerabilities on eGov. And thanks to this platform, with this help that it provides help, these so-called white hackers or ethical hackers, the legal ones basically, which possess legal. I think it's a huge success for us, for this mechanism, for this ecosystem that we are building as a regulator. It helps us interact with the members of the market correctly, accordingly, and identify these vulnerabilities and be able to timely identify them and close them. So it's good that with this ecosystems kind of fighting with each other. That's very good. Okay, we are now gradually approaching to the end of our panel session. The final part is one of my favorite, is cyber awareness. Everything that's related to increasing public's awareness in terms of cyber security, and especially in terms of financial services. So let's try with the regulatory area of this. Ekaterina Vasilyevna, what has now been implemented and developed in the regulatory act so that this area, this awareness of people's cybersecurity awareness is increasing? So that not only the youngsters, but also the elderly are also aware. So we have 3 minutes for each speaker. So I would like to mention that we don't have to do any interventions on the regulatory areas. We do have some IT education approaches to rethink and relook the awareness increase in information awareness in the public's in cyber areas. We do have some measurements, some measures, some areas, some reaction. Something that we are now actively trying to work on, especially because of lack of competency and lack of awareness in public. So obviously most of them are like legal. And it depends on related to the responsibility of those institutions related to cybersecurity or security or responsibility, or which are now trying to provide cybersecurity, especially in the financial sector, related to their own financial security. So in terms of their users, they certainly are now trying to provide works. And when leakage of personal data, maybe it will happen due to absolute no idea, lack of knowledge. But I'd like to highlight another direction which is now actively developing, the tendencies of the future which we'll have to face, and why this cyber awareness is now very important for us. Dear colleagues, because in fact we are now coming into an area of a financial sector, information sector, which has no boundaries, boundaryless. No certain localization, no need to localize it, no certain. And most importantly, we are now coming to decentralized models of functioning of those industries. What that means? That means we are now stepping away of our used hard verticals, centralized platforms where. Well, it means that each person can be their own director, the lead, the manager, whether they want it or not want it. So that's what the time requires. So that for us to be able to kind of make this kind of decisions, everyone will need to have a certain level of set skills. What we see now, decentralized crypto platforms, which are being actively, our users are now being actively included in that, where they lose a lot of money, suffer serious damages to volatile crypto actors, because all of that is due to absence of knowledge. But with these decentralized work points, what we see from a flourishing DeFi criminalization, what we see as of today with the banning and recommendations, we won't be able to deal with that. We can only combat that by raising the people's awareness. And it's not about the law. I think it's mostly related to the responsibility of those platforms which do provide completely new quality of services, completely new areas of services, and work in those industries. And it has a perspective of becoming the center which provides cybersecurity in the market, in the country, and the state body system. And in the future, I do believe that there will be a necessity, a need for us to fill in these gaps in people's awareness, and they will be improving, as in like there will be, so as a responsibility of all of our experts who work in this area. And it's each and everyone's responsibility, no matter what the job they're doing. So all of us need to be included into this work to make it popularized, make it more widespread. Thank you. I know that the regulatory norm is actively issuing these updates in this area. Related to this question we are discussing now, do you have some special material on cyber awareness, or maybe the ministry is working on something else? Actually, yes, we do have certain, starting from 2017, what we are holding an annual, we are carrying out annual work, which is a social study. What we're doing is we try to measure the level of citizens' awareness on this area, on cyber hygiene. And we create methodological recommendations. They are all on the ministry's website. So what else we would like to do is we do understand that studying international experience and world practices, all the organizational and preventive measures are only 10% of the protection. No matter how much money we invest into informational security, where we purchase the hard metal, and we would only, let's say, cover 10%. The remaining 90% is a human factor. Let's say a hacker will find it hard to hack into the banking system. Well, let's say no one is now trying to hack the banks, right? Hackers are trying to hack the people, and the people are the easiest to hack. So as a regulator, we do see this problem. And within the foreseeable future, what we see, we try to change the system. We try to change the system of notifying the users of their personal data leakage, and then using the personal cabinet on this electronic system, we try to make people aware of the risks, and we try to implement the levels of educational systems. For people who work at the government, these kind of platforms will have to be compulsory. Anyone who works for the government, who works with lots of different data, especially including the personal data, will have to use these kind of platforms. That will be the compulsory, the main leakage channel. If it's hard, let's say, to hack the eGov system, but it's easier to kind of hack a human being, a person who works there, who will be able to leak all of the personal data. So in any case, it's a human factor always. It's the people. For us to minimize these factors, what we need to do, we plan to implement a special educational programs that will be for people who work for the government. And for all the government peoples, they will have to go through this kind of compulsory training, and then they will receive a certificate at the end. So it's not enough for you to be just IT person or a lawyer. You will have to undergo a special cyber hygiene security training, and you will have to confront and approve. You will have to have this kind of security. You won't be able to work with anyone else's data, because that means you, meaning the human being, human factor, the people are the main factor of personal data leakage, and that causes the criminalization. So this complex, work will need to be supported by this by the community, by the society. Obviously, we could say, yes, it's an additional responsibility for us. They might say that, the people might say that, but that's where the government, the people have to meet us halfway. Yes, if you are working for the government, then please provide us with a certificate that says you can work with the people with data. Then the government needs to create these kind of platforms and make them free and accessible for their citizens. We will try and test this program platform on eGov. Whenever a person comes, try to get information, and then we will make sure these trainings are free in online regime when they are shown some well-known cases, and then do a little bit of some sort of an exam. And that's when we don't just want to do this kind of work doesn't just is going to be carried out on that government portal such as eGov, but we hope all of our banking systems and banking mobile apps will also have this kind of work included, and mobile work operators, cell work, will be able to use this concept in their apps. It's just all of us jointly together in collaboration and cooperation. Only that's how we can make sure our people are not subject to fraud. That's our goal as a government. Do you remember when we tried to educate 2,400 government workers? It's interesting to see the Ministry of Internal Affairs opinion. Do you have some sort of updates, some new works, some new developments that you are trying to implement in trying to combat and prevent fraud? Yes, that's what actually we've been constantly doing. The constant financial awareness is the main method for us to combat cyber fraud, especially internet fraud, cybersecurity, cyber criminalism. So what we do, we have a special program which is being carried out, which is against phone and mobile fraud. And within the frameworks of this framework, we are carrying out a large preventive work with our mass media. We create some videos. We make some. We try to attract and include bloggers, sportsmen. We have about 17,000 videos like that of this material in this year. What we publish is the main goals. We try to deliver the main goals of cybersecurity to people, so that our people are aware that whenever there's like new developments. It's a very good roadmap that has been developed by Amanat Party. We do Қарусыз қоғам, which aims at working on financial security, financial knowledge awareness, and Ministry of Internal Affairs has some points in that roadmap. Apart from all that, our concept by providing society security, community security for 2022, 24, 28 years, cybersecurity has a separate area in that, and it includes the preventive measures. Right, thanks a lot. I guess by finalizing this session, Roman Viktorovich, I am aware that there's a portal that's called fincongress.kz. Why do I know that? It's because I actually carry out a column. I do write a column for that, and sometimes I do live streams on Instagram. God forgive me. Would you please be able to talk a little bit more in detail about this portal and what are the main goals for it and how it encourages all of these preventive measures and awareness measures? Thanks a lot, Yevgeny. If we are to look at the name itself, it's called Fingramata, which is about financial knowledge, financial awareness. Since we are living in a fast-changing world, the pace is so quick, and obviously this portal has some data, some material on cyber hygiene, cyber security, main areas of frauds, so people are aware of main schemes. It's a good portal. It's functioning. We do try to attract lots of members. We carrying out a large scale of work during this. We will have a separate panel session after lunch related to this. Alexandra will talk about the personal users protection. As a regulator, we do try to publish the material and we moderate them, and we look at the tendencies and try to see for our press club and our department for data protection. Obviously, we could say that as within the organization, as Ruslan Kinjibekov mentioned earlier, all of the state body workers, government workers have to have a certain level of awareness that will let all of the users and the community make sure that everyone is very well aware, very well educated, so that the users are aware, can be let's say sure that everyone's aware. That's what we do occasionally. We try to raise awareness of our staff, of our workers. It's important to note that in most cases, Evgeny, it's correct when you say that who will come to our panel session, who is going to visit us, how to motivate people to be cyberly aware, to be aware of these topics. So whenever people turn to these only when something actually happens to them, only when they suffered, they were damaged, and then they're like, oh my God, I've heard it somewhere. Yeah, I've seen a video. Maybe I've seen something by Ministry of Internal Affairs. Maybe I should have paid more attention. People are falling behind on that. There are so-called reluctant. So in my understanding, cybersecurity, cyber awareness needs to be implemented starting from a school age for school students. Obviously, now it's understandable. All of this government body, all the financial, everyone's trying to make sure this is being delivered to the community. But the results are not as fruitful as we'd like them to be. So, but if we don't start implementing, spreading this knowledge since children are students, if we don't start it at an early age, it's going to be too late. Financial security, financial knowledge, and cyber security. We should be implementing it from a school age. Obviously, these platforms are very helpful. They do help us monitor the tendencies, the trends, but still, nevertheless, in my personal opinion, I think the result, the KPI, is going to be higher if we start implementing it since when the kids are school kids.
Thank you very much, colleagues. I think this point of view is very close to me. And at one point, I was developing a lot of material for even the smallest kids, and for adults, for the most vulnerable people. We have 1 minute left for our session. I'd like to thank all of us. I'd like to draw your attention, guests, and the viewers who are watching us right now. I'd like to draw your attention to the following. Look at all the people who are in the panel today. These are the veterans. These are the owners of the groups that protect us. So all these people in front of us, we have to thank them for our cybersecurity. Of course, we like to punish, to criticize, to give our opinions, and to say how we think that things should be done. But as a project owner, I need to say that we need just to support them. So I want to say that the society, that the mass media, and the general people, just the regular citizens, I wish for all of them to understand what these people are doing. Those people who are at the top of the cybersecurity in different branches, in the executive, in the legislative, in the regulatory, in terms of business, and we just need to support and need to just say something good and to talk about cyber threats to all the people around you. So please stay safe and fight against these scammers. Take care. Have a good day.